here and welcome. This is our Finding Fearless Community moment for the month. I'm so excited for the session we've got in store for everyone today. Emily, as many of you know, is a dear, dear friend of mine and one of my favorite people in the world to build brand work with. I feel like anytime I'm in a room with Emily, I leave inspired and with new ideas. And it's hilarious whenever we're at an event together because we just end up bouncing ideas across the aisle with each other. And so I'm so grateful to you, Em, for saying yes when we offered this opportunity to you. Do you want to take a quick moment while people are coming in to introduce yourself a little bit before we dive in?
Yes, sure. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It's always gives me a special sense of glee to be with Madeline and thus her community of all of you who embody fearlessness just by diving into these conversations that she hosts. And I'm always curious to see what she's got coming up. And so when she asked for me to be one of those things coming up, I was like, yay, exciting. So I am signing on. I'll start with where I'm signing on from today. So I'm not a native Phoenician, but I've been in Phoenix for the majority of my life. I've lived in other places, but that's where I'm signing on from, downtown Scottsdale, if you're familiar with the area. My background is in journalism. Originally in my career, early days, I spent about 8.5 years started as a cub reporter in journalism, worked all the way up to a publisher. So really story, language, crafting of narrative was part of, as well as running all the operations and advertising and all that. Part of my background, I use those skills every single day in what I do today. Spent some time in PR, ghostwriting, communication, grab bag of all of those type of pursuits. And then I kind of got very interested in how we get our arms around brand. And as I kind of went into corporate world, I realized that there was this huge gap between the desire and the sweat and the love that entrepreneurs and business people pour into their work and how that gets expressed to the world. And to me, being a lover of language, that felt like an injustice. So that's really what Root River was born out of. And we fast forward 7 years, my business partner and I, Justin Foster, started Root River as an agency, sort of a brand strategy team that can come alongside of solopreneurs or marketing professionals and help support them to find that brand. So that's a little about me. I have 2 daughters. They're 18 and 14. I've been married for coming up on 20 years to my wonderful husband, Jason. And yeah, I love reading. And yes. I'm on vacation tomorrow.
And I wanted to share, for those of you who are curious to see a sample of Emily and Justin's work, they were instrumental in our Fearless Foundry rebrand last year. We were lucky enough to do a session with their team and our full team, and really helped us codify a lot of the language that we use now to describe our brand. And it was such a cool dose of taking our own medicine and working with the team that really inspires us. So big shout out to them for all the work that they've done with us to help build our stronger brand. So I want to give context for the conversation today because it's so important to share with you all why we invited Emily in. And the journey we've been on, really has been one of personal development for the past couple of months and professional development mixed in there. But it is critical for us to really pull this important thread of the brand being a bit personal. And there was a lot of work we did and Emily did in the past year where folks came out of the woodwork because of COVID and said, if I'm going to be working in the middle of a global pandemic, it's going to be with who I want, how I want, doing the services I want, clients I love. And we saw a lot of brand, revision and reinvention and rebranding, quite frankly, happen last year. And we saw new brands come to life, which is equally exciting. And so it felt like a really critical moment to pull Emily into this conversation to talk about, all of these really deeply rooted things that go into a beautiful brand. So that's why we have her here today. So this is where I say keys to the kingdom are officially yours. I highly recommend, if you don't have one already, pull out, your Fearless Foundry notebook, the one we sent y'all in the mail. And please take notes, because she's got some great stuff in store for us. So go ahead and take us away.
Cool, thank you. So this won't just be listening to me. I'll do a little level set, as I call it at the beginning. And then we're going to dive into some practices and just have some fun with how we get in touch. How do we bring more of us into our brand? So with that, I'm going to share my screen and kick off my slide deck here. There we go. You all right? Seeing that? Cool. So this idea of how do we bring more of ourselves into our brand? And as Madeline said, the last year and a half have been traumatizing. And what do we do in trauma? We retract, we protect, we fight, we freeze, or we flee, right? So you may have been moving in a direction prior to the pandemic with your brand that felt really in alignment. I know I was. I felt like, oh, here we are, we're right on the brink. It felt so good. And then the pandemic shifted so much. And my orientation, if any of you are familiar with the Enneagram, is always to give. I'm a 2. So let me know in chat what you are. So I found myself in the pandemic giving, and we really wanted to give to our audience, and we just wanted to support people. And even though that's a beautiful impulse, it kind of pulled me away. And then so much shifted in our business and we had to change things. So we felt pulled to create new things and to adapt. And, obviously I was home all the time. I had gone from traveling 2-3 times a month and having that perspective of my world to really being very myopic in my own world. All of this to say that when I got out of the den where I'd been sleeping and hibernating, there were things about my own brand that I knew had shifted, but I did not know what, and I could not name it necessarily. And so I come to this with the hope that maybe some of that's happened for you as well. And I want to meet you there. And so if you have already done brand work, and maybe Stephanie, I see you, I know there are some people that maybe already have, just take a beat to kind of unknow what your brand is and give yourself some room to explore what's shifted. And in order to bring more of us into our brand, we really have to give ourselves permission to unknow what our brand has been and let something new be born. So as I mentioned, let's do a quick little level set so you understand my perspective and where I'm coming from. So brand, the way we define it, we always like to define this term because there's a bajillion different definitions for it, but it's how other people experience what you believe. And the 2 operative words there being experience and believe. So brand is not, just an inert thing, a mark or a logo or colors. As you know, it is a full body emotional experience. And it is rooted not in your offerings, not in your products, but in what you believe. That's where it comes from, right? If you heard my introduction, right? That's the thing that I saw us doing as human beings, just pouring everything, the majority of our lives, literally, into our work, and not making the connection between all of our efforts and where that comes from, the deeper drives, the deeper motivations. So we work basically on beliefs and experiences in Root and River, and we're uncovering and articulating them in order to really inform the experience in a more mindful way. So whether or not you choose to do intrinsic branding work, these 2 things will always be true about brand. The other thing I wanted to talk about this morning was this idea of choice. I know it feels like you must be a personal brand and you have to put yourself out there. But I really want to honor, especially for the fearless audience, that it's always a choice. How you share, what you share, when you share. It's always a choice. And it's always a choice to not do that if you don't feel moved that way. There have been times, I would probably say I would say I'm half introvert, half extrovert. Sometimes those go to war and the introvert wins, and she just needs some time away from it all. So that's fine. The giving yourself the space to tune into what you're choosing at this moment, and to think about when you're choosing something else to be more outgoing or to really develop the personal brand, then honoring that too and giving that space and a way to do that mindfully. But it always starts with choice. That being said, this makes me happy. I really wanted to give you a few examples of, they all happen to be women who have made a conscious, I feel, have made a very conscious choice to, they were sort of thrust or chose to be put in the spotlight. Michelle, I would say more thrust. And she had a brand already. She made a conscious choice in my mind to put more of herself into her brand and share more of her soul. And she's continued to do that, I think, in a very mindful way, even after, she's not the first lady anymore. I love this picture because she's got tan lines. She looks, she's got a headband on, like it's very real. And I just feel that she's a great example of someone who has mindfully taken that choice and at moments pulled back and at moments come forward. And she's been thoughtful about that. So I want to note that, like, there is this thing where if you are a person who's out there in the world, whether you're an entrepreneur or a professional in your industry, or you're, the first lady, you still have an opportunity to bring yourself or hold back. And it's pretty cool to see someone like her doing that in such an authentic way. Beyonce, I would say the same thing here. It's one thing to pursue your art, be an artist, be a recording artist, be a rock star. And then it's another to deepen that and take that to a more intentional level and to be raw and open about, I think of the Lemonade album, like the tragedies in your life, the betrayals, and then also not just build that into your art, but also look at the world around you and the things that she's taken on during the pandemic, the Black is King visual album, just the way she's choosing to create her art very mindfully and giving back to her community. I feel like that's a woman who's bringing her whole self in. And it's not always super polished. Like she tends to just be so artistic that a lot of her imagery is. But I was reading an interview with her in Vogue, and the interviewer asked a great question at the end. He said, "You're so good at everything, Beyonce. Is there something you're not good at?" She says, "I am terrible about keeping my phone. Like, I always losing my phone. I can't find it like 100 times a day. It drives everyone crazy in the family. And I'm also really bad at knowing like schedules and times and what day is when." She's like, "I completely blow things all the time. But I can tell you what your hair was styled like when we talked. I can replay the conversation, but I'm awful with kind of time management." That made me feel better. And she's definitely choosing to step into that at times. And lastly, yes, RGB. And I love this photo as well because she didn't have to wear her collar, her specific, that collar that we've seen her in. She didn't have to put on this glove, the red earrings. I just think that there was a moment in her career and her where she decided to kind of meet the world and the media where it was and give more of herself to the conversation. And I think she was always outspoken, but I don't think she was always necessarily that way. But there was a moment where I think she felt the world needed more for the times that we were living in. And so it feels like she made a conscious choice to be more of who she was and share that with the world. So I want to do a quick exercise, actually. So if you'll kind of drop in, just take a moment, sit back in your chair, get comfortable, or if you're standing, relax your shoulders, sort of let them drop away from your ears. And take a deep breath. And I want you to imagine yourself as personal brand, as you are. And imagine that you are holding back a little bit. Lean into the energy that you're holding yourself a little bit back from that. And just notice what happens in your body. And now I want you to imagine, take another deep breath, that you are in an abundant state and you're leaning into giving more of yourself into your brand and expressing that to the world. And I want you to feel what happens. All right. And as you're thinking about that and what happened in your body in those two different scenarios, if you'd like to drop your thoughts into the chat, I would be so anxious to learn what you felt. And let me see, I can't get chat that. Where's my chat? So what did you feel? How did your body respond to that? Anybody want to share? Grounded, yeah. Was there a difference between the
Yeah.
Mhm. Go ahead.
I, and you know a bit more about my meditation practice, but for me, that drop-in feeling, I think particularly pertinent to brand, there is like a feeling sometimes of like having to always be out there and watching what everybody else is doing, and there's a scarcity feeling that arises sometimes in terms of like we could always be doing more, and so to just drop in like that is like it's a different place to think about how you're going to behave from that moment versus being out here. So it was grounding in that sense, yeah, for me.
So when you were holding back, where did you feel it in your body?
My chest, for sure. A lot of my tension and anxiety starts like around my heart.
Mm-hmm. And then when you were being more abundant, how did
just like
shift at all?
Yeah, open, more relaxed.
Cool. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, seeing a lot of that in the chat too. Relaxed is a common theme.
It's always good to take a breath in these long virtual days. Yeah. And that's just something that you can play with. I think a lot of times when we get into the space of thinking about brand and how we want to express it, for myself, sometimes even the natural reaction is to sort of tense up and to kind of clamp down and to have a lot of fear come up around what am I going to say and how am I going to express. So when that, one of the practices I use is just trying to relax into my body in those moments and let it guide me. All right, let me get back to my share. So I also want to be practical here. So these are some of the common challenges to sharing beliefs, that inner structure of your brand, right? And we've all heard a lot of these before. So, work isn't the place for your beliefs or for yourself, or like, don't be too much, like, don't say too much about who you are in your professional life. Then there's this fear of offending, right? I don't want to offend someone. And I think that's only been compounded in the last year because our worlds have been virtual worlds, and canceling and boycotting are such powerful tools, but they can also feel like threats to us. And so that brings up this fear of, exclusion, of offense, of divisiveness. What if people don't like what I say and they leave? So this is sort of like offending, but it's kind of the next level. Like they drop me or they leave my life, on a very personal level. What if I'm expressing more of my brand and bringing more of me into my brand? People don't like that and they leave, and the fear of abandonment, it's a very real human fear. And finally, the last fear is like, well, I don't know what to say. I mean, we hear this all the time. I just don't know. I don't know what to say. And it's a fear of a lack of ability to express, to articulate. We all get that feeling of, kind of being tongue tied, or we get into an intense debate or discussion and our mind just goes blank. And then 2 hours later, like, I should have said this. Right. So there's that fear of, I don't know what to say. So reframe each of these. This idea that work is the place for your beliefs. My favorite citation here is Daniel Kahneman, who's an author and a thinker and the 2002 Nobel Prize winner in economics. I use him because there could not be a more learned person about economics and businesses and markets. And here's what he said, and I love this quote. Hello, people. That business is way more about emotions than business people care to think. And it is time to put the passion for work and joy of creation back into business. This is what we're doing anyway. We just haven't been honest with ourselves about where it's coming from and what it needs. So some people, like their counter to like being more emotionally driven, expressive is like, no, we need to stick to the data, right? Let's just stick to the ROI and the data and go from there. But data does not allow you to connect with the human decision maker, because the human decision maker is the emotional center. That's where all of our decisions come from, where they're made in less time than it takes us to blink our eyes. So that's how fast. And then the left brain comes in and helps with the rationalization of that decision. But it all begins in the emotional center, and the data will not resonate there. And this is like one of my ever returning to refrains here, that businesses that stand by their beliefs outperform those that don't. And there's just a pile of data to back this up. It's a good use of data, right? So I did a little bit of research, anywhere from either 42% to 1,681%. These are the various rates that purpose-driven businesses outperform their neutral counterparts. And this is coming from a variety of studies, and there were way more statistics that I could have cited here, but it's just scientific fact. Those that are aligned, and I even looked at some longitudinal studies where it's like over a period of years, and that's only accelerated within the last year. And you do know what to say, lastly. It's just a matter of kind of rooting down into who you are and grounding down to uncover that. And that's what we're going to focus on next. And if you have any questions as we go, just go ahead and pop them in chat. Maybe Madeline, you can keep an eye out for anything that's essential for me to cover. So here's how you know what to say. So all brands begin below the surface as a seed. And that seed that's rooted in the soil of soul, it's there, it's inert, nobody walking by can observe it, can see it. But something happens within itself, within the conditions, and that seed breaks. We all break open. And that's really the beginning of knowing ourselves. And so when we say we don't know what to say, think of a time when you were broken open and what you learned out of that experience. And that's where the beginning of knowing what to say kind of comes from, whether that brings you into empathy or that brings you into a really powerful lesson that's dictated the rest of your life. That's where you begin. So the seed first starts growing down. It doesn't grow up first, which if you think logically, you'd think, oh, maybe it's just going to grow up because it needs sunshine, right? It needs water. No, it grows down first. It establishes a root system first. And the root system is rooting into your fears, your hopes, your purpose, your values, the things that have gone right in your life, the things that have gone wrong. And we call this the beliefs level. So that's what's happening there. After the root system is established, then the plant begins to grow up. And that's where it becomes observable. It unfurls a leaf, people walk by, they're like, oh, something's growing there. Oh, I wonder what it is. What is this plant going to be? And now we can look at the plant, we can begin to observe and make educated guesses about what sort of plant this is, right? We can't tell what people believe, but we know how they behave. We know what standards they have for themselves. And that's where we can begin to make inferences about what they believe. So that's the behaviors level. And then finally, this last B, which if there's enough sunshine, the soil's good, the root system is established, there's enough water, this third thing happens where this bloom unfurls, and it has a particular attractive hue and a gorgeous fragrance. And so now it's not just observational. We as the passersby are invited into the experience of the rose. And so birds, bees, butterflies are attracted to the rose. But this other thing also happens where there are also a host of other creatures that are repelled. And branding is much more about repulsion than it is about attraction, particularly in the formative stage. So we need to think about our brand in terms of how does what I believe, how is that going to repel, which is scary, the people who do not believe what I believe as quickly and efficiently as possible so they never come into my ecosystem and become a drain of my time, my resources, and I think most importantly, my energy. If we take this contrarian viewpoint, it's much easier. Like at first it's freaky, right? It scares us. But if we can take this viewpoint, it begins to really help clarify what we are about, who we are for, because the brain, just from a neurological standpoint, is much more efficient at knowing what it wants to avoid than what it espouses, because there's more gradient there. Oh, maybe I'd like it, I'll just try it and we'll see. But it's super efficient at knowing what it wants to avoid. So I'll pause and just look at chat. Okay, perfect. I know, roses, whether you like roses or not, you can substitute any flower you want. I like sunflowers. Maybe I'll draw one with the sunflower next. So let's get into it. Let's get into core beliefs. We're about 30 minutes in. So I want you to take out that notepad. If you haven't taken any notes yet, we're going to do some exercises around core beliefs. So how we define beliefs, they're closely held values. They exist at the core of you, the deep inner you. And it's very helpful to think about them as non-negotiables. And you may be consciously living by these non-negotiables or unconsciously living by them. But non-negotiables for you, if these are not honored, you just can't work there, can't be in friendship with this person, can't find a relationship with this person or entity. So they are non-negotiable. There's no gradient to them. So I'm throwing up on the screen here 4 questions that I'd love for you to, we'll take a few minutes to consider. And if you've got your notebook, spend some time journaling on. And this is 4 different ways that we use to get at what you truly believe. So comfort in chaos. One of my favorites is, what am I trying to instill in my children, the grandchildren, or people I mentor? I love that because with my kids, I need them to know what I believe. They don't have to believe that. They don't have to drink the Kool-Aid fully. In fact, I want a little resistance from them. But they need to know their mother believes it before they leave my home, because I want them to be packed with that on their way out in the world. What would you commit civil disobedience to defend, or what have you in the past? What have you taken to the streets for? And not just the bigger cause or the sign of the day, but at how it connected to you, why it motivated you up and out. And then finally, there's this beautiful thing where if you think back to before the age of 4 or 5, or around that age, was there something that you believed in that really was not taught to you, was not imparted in any way? And in our work over the last 6-7 years, it's been so interesting because so many people have stories from that age of where they got in trouble for something. And they kind of didn't know why they were in trouble. They're like, why am I even in trouble for this? Because it's so inherent to who you are. It's a belief at the soul level. So we'll just take a couple minutes to kind of noodle on those. And there may be one that pops out for you. So follow that. Or maybe you want to try to answer all 4. Fine. Jot down some thoughts. I'll give you just a couple minutes to do that. Maybe just another minute to kind of finish up. All right. All right, so what we're after here as you look over your answers, we're in the unearthing process. So hopefully one of these caught your attention and you were able to kind of dive into it. What we want to do is sort of look at our answers. And in a minute, I'll ask if anyone would like to share. As we're trying to formulate our brand, our goal is to hone each answer into sort of one word. So a one word belief. And the next slide here is just some of the words that people have come up with. And I don't want to bias you too much, so I'll show it again in a second. But really taking whatever came up for you and whittling it down to one word that more it symbolizes and expresses. So words are really important. I think they have energy. Maya Angelou said that words are things. They get into the wallpaper and they stay. So we want to be really intentional about the words that we select. And we always tell people when we work with them, it's not the word that makes sense here, it's the word that makes sense here, right in your heart. And that feels like the right word to express this idea. So is there a brave soul who would like to unmute? Can people unmute, Madeline, or can they just type into chat?
They can type in the chat and they can also raise their hand if they want to. And while we're waiting, I've done this process many times before and I always uncover new things. But the first one that always comes to the forefront for me has to do with equity. And it took me a long time to understand what the root belief was, because I was thinking more about the surface level things. I was like, I'm really passionate about education. I'm really passionate about equal pay for women. And basically like what kept coming up was like this things that are inequitable. I was really passionate about changing that. And so that was where, I really kind of uncovered that their root belief is about equity.
Yeah. So it's funny because thank you for sharing that. A lot of people will go to the behavior, which is sort of what you do. Like you go to the behavior action and you're like, yeah, that's what I believe in. But actually the belief is like the thing underneath it, that the behavior is performing that, right? So you have this deep rooted belief in equity, and that's why you take action on women's rights. Yeah. So that's a very powerful way to kind of come at it. So you haven't done it wrong if in answering these questions you've written about the action you've taken, but I would also invite you to challenge, is that the way I am performing a deeper belief? Because we tend to stop at sort of the higher level, the behaviors level, the leaf level. But it's totally possible to reverse engineer. Anybody else want to share and want some help? This is your opportunity to get me to help you hone in on one of your beliefs. So if you had some thoughts around any of these questions and really kind of want to hone it down or whittle away till you have a belief, definitely raise your hand or drop in chat. Just wait another minute. And if nothing occurs to you now, you can always reach out later with something that came up. Happy to help. All right. So As I mentioned, the exercise here is to hone down to a one word. And when we work with clients, we like to start with 5 root beliefs, like 5 of these core values, sometimes called by other people. So we're looking for 5. It gives us enough variety and enough depth for you to be able to speak to that in your brand and have a nice kind of assortment of different beliefs. Um, and again, these are words that really resonate for you at a molecular level. They embody something about you. And you can define them your own way. One of my beliefs is for years, I went around, and another way that a belief is that when it gets like infringed on, you freak out. Like there's a strong reaction. And so I always thought for years, like, oh, it's loyalty. I am very, very loyal. But then I realized that's really how I'm behaving something deeper. And I had to go deeper than that. So I took it a step deeper. I'm like, okay, why am I having this fierce reaction when I have this sense of disloyalty? And it was coming up in my business relationships, coming up in personal relationships. I took a step back, and I realized that for me, the deepest belief is in family. And not, I kind of like didn't like that at first, because people were like, I do everything for my family. That's my why, which is awesome. But I felt like it was a surface thing for me. For me, I grew up in a very tight knit family. My parents were raised in Youngstown, Ohio, in a very Italian ethnic kind of community. And so we were really raised with more of an immigrant mindset. My great grandparents came to this country. My grandparents were blue collar workers trying to advance the family. And for me, family is a belief. It is like, it's not just the people you're related to, but it's how you behave with them and what they bring out in you and how you tussle with them. And then the standard of the way that I live that out is through loyalty. I realize the loyalty is how I'm living out family. So that's just an example of taking a word and kind of defining it for yourself. All right. So I want to talk about how this fits into brand. So a really healthy, a flourishing brand, as we like to say, because you're never done with branding. It's a practice in our belief, and you need to continue to nurture it. But these are the 6 traits of a flourishing brand. So you need each of these and be tending to each of these in order for that brand to carry, and for you to have enough variety that you can return to and share out with the world. So the first one is mission and vision. And we don't mean mission statements, because those are boring and nobody cares. Our definition of mission is the thing you're here to do that only you can do. And so just like beliefs, this is another pull the car over moment, right? It's the question of what have you been put here on earth to do that only you can do? And that may bring up for you that immediate reaction might be, me, like I'm the only one that can do this. No. But you need to suspend that, right? Suspend your disbelief that you're not special. And for this exercise, you are special, and you have been given a certain set of circumstances, a certain set of abilities, a certain set of maybe education, geographics, skin color, whatever it is. You've been given this set of things that puts you in a position to do something huge. And for mission, we define that as something that is BFD. It's a big freaking deal, but it's also it brings up insecurities. Like, it is so big that it's going to make you feel a little nervous, a little bit, oh God, do I really have to take this on? F, it's going to evoke feelings. So you cannot talk about your mission and convey any excitement towards it or anticipation for it unless you feel those emotions within yourself. So as you're looking to mission, you need to calibrate to, am I feeling it? And then finally, D, it's going to make a dent in the universe. So if I achieve my mission, it will shift something in my family, in my community, in my organization, in the world. And that is very traceable. Missions that we help our clients hone are 3 to 5 words typically. So we all have personal missions, and it's our belief that your personal mission will align. There'll be a direct line of sight from your personal mission into your brand or your business mission. It doesn't mean they're always the same. It means that your personal mission will align and inform and feel in agreement with the larger mission of your organization. So for me, my personal mission is to inspire people to live undivided lives. I'm a big fan of Parker Palmer and A Hidden Wholeness and his work about how we tend to divide ourselves up into all of these categories, and we separate out different parts of ourselves. And the goal is really to live into all of those parts and to heal that dividedness. And it's going to come up again and again throughout your life. If I can inspire someone to live less divided, and myself, then I've done my job here. And the mission of Root River is to inspire leaders to go inward. So that's our big thing and our little thing. Like, it's so compact and simple, but we can get off track if we are not calibrating to that. If we take on opportunities or projects where we can't inspire leaders to go inward, to calibrate to their own inner wisdom, then we can't do it. And we've turned things down, lucrative things down, because we didn't really feel like we could serve the mission in that capacity. And so it's a great rubric. Mission is a really powerful rubric for us to use to be able to determine the future of our business. B stands for BFD, so it's brings up insecurities. Aaron asked, brings up insecurities. If you go into and look at some of our most amazing movement leaders, there's always a moment when they say, me? You want me to stand up? You want me to take the seat at the front of the bus? You want me to advocate against the caste system in India? Mahatma Gandhi, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr. talks about this, writes about that feeling. That's what the B really stands for. If you're like, oh yeah, that's my mission, I got it, no problem, we're not thinking big enough yet or deep enough yet. And then moving on to beliefs and standards, I talked about those. For standards, we take those set of 5 beliefs, and you can do this. All of our work is definitely, you can work on your own to try to apply this. Taking each of the beliefs and then creating a little mantra that really expresses the standard. And it's how you are going to hold yourself and others accountable to that belief. So for example, one of our beliefs at Root River is in defiance. And our standard for that is find the flow and forget the formula. So anyone we work with, they definitely need to appreciate systems, but not be formulaic and not be too married to a certain way of delivering, particularly when it comes to clients. We have a flow, and we don't do agendas, we do flows, and then we see where it takes us. So that's an example. Message and language. This is where we take, it comes down to your message is what your heart has to say to the world. It's not what people want to hear and what you think might make people happy. It's what you have to say based on your beliefs, your standards, the way you see the world, your mission. It's sort of putting all those together and saying, this is the philosophy we have, come join us. That's really what message is. And pulling that in through the language. So you're starting with that emotional message first, and then you're pulling through into the what and the how. So all our messaging follows a why, what, how formula. You're always beginning with your perspective or your philosophy. So people ask me what I do, and I say, well, I believe great brands are spiritual experiences. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a brand strategy team. And it kind of goes on from there. So we begin with that emotional message, and then you can tell them what you do and how you do it. Differentiators, our thing here is, are you odd, right? Are your differentiators obvious? Are they daring? And are they deliberate things you're doing that you have chosen to do in your business or in your brand that are different than other people? So obvious is kind of my current obsession, because we make our audience do all kinds of work when we're not telling them how we're different. We're forcing them to kind of, oh, they have to do all this research, they've got to get all of these testimonials because they don't really understand. They've got to visit website, they have to. Why do that when you can be, if you are clear on what your differentiators are, you can just tell them, just illustrate them, just put them on your website, but don't make your audience do the work. Make sure your differentiators are obvious. Category ownership. In this day and age, we can't really rely on the old school way of doing positioning. It is an outmoded model. What we want to do is own a specific conversation in the market. And that's what category ownership is. And it's not a part of the market that already exists in our philosophy. It's something new that you are naming and then owning through content, through language, and through brand experience. And then finally, audience alignment. So again, we don't believe in target markets. I just wrote on LinkedIn the other day, I am not a target market. That's dehumanizing language. I don't want to be a target, and I'm a human being. I'm not a market. So we use the term audience, and that really embodies to us this idea of drawing people in, inspiring them, inviting them into a conversation and experience and engagement, and tending to them. Audience to me also connotes a lot of, you're inviting them into your space, like there's a hospitality to it, right? You don't want to have a performance and have the audience come and sit on uncomfortable chairs for 2 hours. You want to be tending to their needs in the work that you're doing. Any questions on any of these aspects of the brand? Cool. So that's fine, Emily, yada, yada, yada. How do we make it real? So how do we actually do the thing where we bring more of ourselves into the brand? So I have 5 specific ways that you can build more you into your brand. So let's kick it off here. Number 1, write an introductory letter telling your prospects about your beliefs. So those beliefs that we worked on earlier, even if you haven't honed them down all the way, you might want to spend some more time doing that. But once you do, pretend that you're at the beginning of an engagement with your ideal client or somebody you're partnering with, what have you, or maybe even a new employee, and you want to share what you believe. So it's a very simple thing. And once it's done, it's a extremely powerful tool. It's an immediate differentiator because now you're willing to talk about the thing that a lot of people in business avoid talking about. If you have your set of standards also articulated, this is also a great place to slot them in. Like, I believe in beauty. And so every day in Root River, one of our standards is, or one of our beliefs is beauty. Our standard for that is create every day. So I think of that every day and I'm like, have I created something today? It can be, so you can share that, with your audience and let them know what to expect out of you. You can even say, these are my standards. So if we don't meet these standards in the time that we spend together, if you see us sort of kind of going astray from these, please redirect us. This is what you can expect from us. Number 2, idea. So if you have each of those beliefs put together, you can write a series of blog posts about each one. I say blog posts. These can be social media posts. These can be video, little vlogs, what have you. They could be stories. But get intentional about what each of the beliefs mean to you. Maybe write for each one of the beliefs. You can write your own definition of what it is. And then just share those. Share them in any way you want. But I mean, if you 5 posts and you want to do 1 a week, you've got a month's worth of content there. And it is you in your brand. So this goes into what I was just talking about. You can design a social media post around each of your core beliefs. And one of the things that we've done on our social feed is have a belief and then you swipe and then the standard is there. You can play with this. You can also point to other people in your network and how they're embodying this belief. So it doesn't have to just be you telling, it can also be you showing, or you showing part of your work or part of your brand that illustrates one of these beliefs. Number 4. So kind of do what we just did. Sit down and journal for just 10 minutes. I'm a huge fan of setting a timer. And journal for how you live out each belief in your brand, in your work every day. One of the questions we like to ask is like, okay, you have this belief. Where do you see it in your everyday behavior? Where do you see it in your team meetings? Where do you see it in how you develop new offerings or new practices? So that's something that you can sit down, you can journal on, and as you can take what you've journaled, refine it a little bit. And this is new about page copy for your website. So suddenly now we're, instead of saying, I was born here and I did this and whatever, or I have this education, you can say, here's how we live out our brand every day. And give examples. It's also a great segue into, maybe it's a showcase of clients or client work. And lastly, after you work with a client, be really intentional. Schedule a conversation with them. Share it once again, those beliefs or standards. If you did the letter, pull the letter back out. Ask them how they experienced it.
Yeah, so I think Emily froze. So hold tight, everyone. We're going to work on getting Emily back on the line, so to speak. She's going to hopefully come back. Hold tight. And thank you for your patience. And I'm really curious to hear from all of you in the chat while we are waiting for Emily to come back. Which of these actions, in terms of really starting to embody your belief systems, are you thinking about taking? Are you going to write a letter? Are you going to do a social media post? So share in the chat with us which action you feel most inspired to take at this moment. I know for me, I've done the social media post before, and the letter seems like an interesting challenge. So for those of you who are waiting, and there she is. Hi. Can you hear us? Oh. Hang tight, y'all. The joys of technology. Okay. Erin sharing, she loves the idea of the introductory letter. I have a welcome letter when clients sign up, but a letter before they join seems so great to differentiate my services. Love this. Okay. Anyone else want to share their thoughts? Kimberly says, I like the idea of a post, maybe linking to a blog. Yes. It's a great way to give a little caption, but then elaborate a little bit further in the blog post. Beautiful. And I'm also curious. Oh, Victoria, I really like the idea of journaling about how you live out each belief in your brand and also expanding it to team members so people can get to know us better. This piece that Victoria brings up here is such a great point, y'all, because it's one thing for you to have these beliefs and to know that your brand is based off of them. And it's another thing to really share these beliefs with not just your clients, but your team. And so I highly, highly recommend, if you're somebody on this call who has team members, this is a really incredible exercise to do with your team. And it's actually how Justin and Emily start a lot of their root sessions, is by getting everyone on the team to really work with and define their beliefs, and then to share them to see where they overlap. And that's really how we built the beliefs behind our brand at the Foundry. So Emily, we had everyone start sharing in the chat which action they were thinking about taking most. And you're back. So feel free to hop in where you left off. And unmute.
There we go. There we go. Okay. So sorry about that.
All good. Movie magic.
Yeah. Sorry. So people are sharing. Let me see.
Yeah, I asked everyone which of these 5 actions they felt most confident in taking based off of.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I'm not seeing the chat.
Okay.
So, okay, now I got everything pulled back up. So you can use those answers from your clients, by the way, as testimonials.
Yeah.
So I switched to my iPad, so I don't have that screen up, but And I put those all two in a list. So happy to share the deck. So when you get it, you'll have a list of all 5. And the last thing I kind of wanted to share before we kind of go into open discussion is that fear will pop up. And when fear pops up, it's not something you want to ignore. It's something, again, that you want to breath about and get into your body about and consider. And then I have these five practices. So reflecting on how your beliefs transcend ideology or theology. So instead of getting trapped in, oh, what do I say? I'm not sure what I can say, and I don't want to offend people, and I don't want them to leave. Drawing a line in the sand with that, stepping back and saying, how do these really embody what I truly believe? And being aware of where you feel that in your body and which belief you're kind of gravitating towards. Just fun. And the other thing is to be really honest with yourself about your intentions for expressing your beliefs. If you're like, I have to get a post up today because I haven't done this, so I know, we all have those pressures, but taking a step back from that energy and setting an intention for, no, okay, you know what I really want to express is something very true. Very, like, I don't see a lot of mess, so I want to express something messy, and just getting really intentional with what you want to share. The next one is to think with your heart. So tuning into your heart space, literally that heart chakra, and just being quiet and listening to what feels like the thing that your heart has to say to the world today. And then you can give your beliefs some more muscularity by exercising them in terms of when you're sitting down to do a presentation. Maybe you're sitting down to write a report, KPI on your marketing performance. Trying to find ways to bring the belief into what you're doing. And you can be as obvious as you want to be about that. You can say, hey, you know what? I put this report together with this belief in mind. Or you can just hold that inside of your own heart. So it's up to you, but just trying to get creative about how you're bringing that in, removing the divisions between the belief and the work. And then finally, one of my favorite mantras is never trust a tired mind. So I never trust what my mind is telling me, like around 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night when I'm, winding down to bed and it's been a long day, my mind starts telling me all kinds of things and I just don't trust it. So don't trust fear. Expressing your beliefs, putting more of you into your brand, it runs counter to a lot of our programming for acceptance and for right? It forces feel more comfortable is to continue to practice it, to continue to do it. And this is one thing I do is I keep a little journal of positive comments from people that people have said to me about my writing or about something they read of mine. And I try to update it and keep it at hand when I am in one of those moments of like, why am I doing this? Imposter syndrome, or what I have to say is really, who cares? I'll open that up and I'll think about these comments and the people from which they came. And that helps me overcome that fear. But that confidence only comes with practice, and it only comes with confronting the end of the plank. So that really kind of brings me to the end of the formal prezzo. But I would love to take any questions you might have or challenges. One of our rules in our work at Root River is no silent dissent. So if you feel like, I don't know about that, or you have shared, definitely air it out. Happy to dive into it.
I have just kind of a general question for you, Emily. Because this is something I've navigated myself, and I think that it's something that you brought up earlier and is really worth a little bit further chat, is this overwhelming pressure that exists right now for us to not only have a company and a brand affiliated with that company, but like you kind of said earlier, to be a brand ourselves. And it's hard when you're an introverted leader to kind of manage those things. And so, we asked that question earlier in the chat, are you an introvert or an extrovert? And we saw a healthy mix. So I'm curious, how do you, if there's a leader who's on the fence of like, should I be a brand? How do you guide them in that decision-making process?
Yeah, that's something that comes up pretty often. Most of the leaders we work with are really humble, and they've gotten to where they are by being more of servant leadership. So it comes up a lot. And I think there's a moment. And to me, that's when these questions start to feel more pressing. That is the moment where the universe is drawing you out, that's drawing out your voice. And so it's sort of the pressure of the world, and then the internal pressure of, oh gosh, I'm really more of an introverted person or a humble person. So I think of our client, Bridgeway Capital Management, which is led by an amazing woman, Tamara Philippe. And she was in that moment when we first started working with her 2 years ago. And she's like, we call it the face of the brand. She's like, I know that in order for our organization to go to the next level, it needs a new face. That the founder had been the face of the brand, but they had been doing all of these things they've been doing all these things for years, having a diverse, very equitable culture and bringing everyone into decision-making progress and promoting ownership. And so what we said to her is, if you do not step forward and own this, then the space that you would have occupied on all of these larger issues that you believe in, it's a vacuum. And it's almost as if part of your servant leadership is to step into being the face of the brand. Now, to go to my first point, it's always a choice. How much you choose to share, when you choose to share. I think rooting in that and having that as a ballast point, knowing that, okay, I'm choosing right now for the next 3 months, maybe it's the next year, to step into my brand. And I'm going to talk about my category. I'm going to talk about my mission a lot. Whatever the pieces are that really resonate with you, that helps people feel more confident and more like they can put on that mantle and carry it forward. So I think you need to take stock of what's you and what's your own reticence and what is the needs of the community that you're in, and trying to find a middle point between those two.
I love that feedback. And I think I agree with you deeply that there's this kind of moment where you realize like the work is bigger than you, and you just, you were just, I like to say, we're just a human. I'm just a human, but also you're the human who was meant to share that work with the world. And so it is a really important energetic balance to strike. But yeah, I admire the way that you're not only helping other leaders do that, but also doing that yourself as a leader. It's pretty impressive. So I didn't see any more questions come in the chat, but I want to encourage everyone. We have a few more minutes here where you have access to Emily. And Emily is just we call y'all fearless practitioners for a reason. She is a practitioner. She is a student and teacher in the world of branding. And so please, consider, if not now, asking her a question, reaching out after the fact. And Emily, I just wanted to give you a second to talk about the community you're creating for marketing leaders, because it is a really special thing. And I didn't know of anything. There wasn't a community like this until you and Justin built it. So please share a little bit about BIMA.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a slide and there's a QR code. I'm so bummed I had to switch because there's a QR code that y'all can use, but when you get the deck, it'll be there for you. So our community is called Being Marketers, and it is a place for ethical and soulful branding, and it's sort of the place to practice. So every day we have, or every other day, we pose a is my audio going?
No, you're good.
Okay, I'm back. We pose a thought-provoking question. Okay, you can engage with us that way, engage with other people who are really trying to be very real in their brand. We have branding, little branders, as we call them. They just take like 2 minutes, but they'll help you develop those different aspects of your brand and practice branding in a way that, again, it's a balance of ethical and soulful. So all are welcome. And for you all today, you get your first month free. So when you get the follow-up email, or you can go to our website and just click on Being Marketers. Our website is rootandriver, all spelled out.com. And then just go to the hamburger and select Being Marketers, and you can learn more about the community. And we'd love to have you.
And I love the space you're shaping. I love the things you share. I highly encourage you going over to the Root River website and joining their newsletter. There's so many great little nuggets that their team shares in terms of just really deep rooted essays thinking about, how can we brand and be different in this world? Because Emily and I share a root belief, which is that we think a lot of marketing is evil. and so that's also some things we're going to be talking about soon here in the Finding Fearless community. So I want to remind everyone who's a member, please, you'll get access to the playback after this session. Emily is so kind gifting us, this recording as well as the slides for you to review. And I strongly encourage you to not only just reflect on those materials, but tell a friend. We're going to be doing a session next month with Christy Vitale on energy management, particularly as we think about how this virtual world saps a different level of energy from us. And then in September, our own Alina Fleming from the Fearless Foundry team is coming to talk about human-centric marketing. So it's going to be a very fun couple of months, and we'd love for you to tell a friend about what we're up to. So Emily, and I've already seen this in the chat, but Emily, I just want to extend our deep gratitude to you for the time and expertise, wisdom that you shared today. And thank you to our community for showing up and engaging with this content. We always love these moments. Thank you, Em.
Thank you, and you're welcome. It's a pleasure to be with all of you.
Okay, awesome. All right, take care, y'all. We're going to leave the chat open for a few minutes, let you all kind of file out, but take care. Have a wonderful day, and we'll be seeing y'all soon.